Today we're going to talk about connecting your Wi-Fi module to your BMS. Now today we're connected to a master with two slaves under it, so you'll get a chance to see how that looks. So the first thing we're going to do is we've turned on all of our devices and our rec BMS is set in AP mode or access point mode. So we're going to connect to that device. Now we're not going to be on the internet here because we're connected to that device simply as an access point. There's another tutorial that shows you how to get it connected onto your own network and visible globally. Alright, so you can see now that we're connected, but there's no internet, which is okay. We're good with that. So, next step is to try and connect to the device. Now its default is set to 192.168.1.84. So that's its physical address on the access point network. So we hit enter here, and we can see that we're connected to the Wi-Fi module, but not to the BMS. Now this is because we have to specify the BMS that we want to connect our Wi-Fi module to. So we go down here and go to firmware. And we can see that we need to set our send address and our receive address. The Q series defaults to address number 1. Address number 2 is used for the active BMS, and number 16 is the default address for the master. And in this case, our Wi-Fi is set to number 0. So we set that to 1 and 16. We go back to our home screen, and now we can see that we're connected to device number 16 on the network. So our state of charge is 38%. We're not drawing any current, so we have infinite hours of available time left. We can see that our highest temperature here is on BMS 2, sensor number 2 and 3, toggling back and forth. We can see that our highest voltage here is BMS number 2, cell number 4, and our minimum voltage is at BMS number 1, cell number 1. We also have this little guy here, which is caused some problems with some people as they don't understand what it is, but it's really quite simply just a general purpose output on your Wi-Fi module with the blue and the black wire. So all we're doing is remotely closing a relay here. This relay can be used to turn on a security system, turn on heaters, whatever you like. It's just a remote control device with a relay coming out of your Wi-Fi module. Now, next thing we can do is look at our voltages. You see here that we've got BMS number 1 and BMS number 2. If you have more than one BMS connected and you only see one, or they both say BMS number 1 or something like that, you likely have your address dip switches set incorrectly. So you need to go back and change the addresses to number 1 and number 2. You can find that information in your manual. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is we're going to show you how to log on. So this is in a viewing mode now. So what we need to do is go back to firmware, and we need to unlock our BMS. To get the password for a Q series, it would be 1Q dash. For the ABMS series, it would be 2A dash. And in the case of the master, it's going to be 9M-0527 in my case. So exactly as you see it here. Okay, so now we're logged in and ready to go. I talked about the Wi-Fi settings in another module. But if we go back to our settings, we can see now we have a red submit button beside everything. For most systems, most people are using LFP batteries, we don't need to touch any of these variables. All we need to do is set our current shunt value here. The default is 500 amps. But if you're using a 200, you merely set it like that. We'll go back and we'll change it back to 500. Usually your current sensor offset will be set to 0. And then we have to set our maximum discharge current per device. But to get started, let's just leave all of these variables exactly where they are. We can change our engineering units from Fahrenheit to Celsius and set our minimum and maximum temperatures. Again, we really don't need to touch any of this. The only one we need to set here is how many amp hours our cells are. Now in this case I have a single cell CALB 230 amp hour, so we don't have it's just a 1P setup. So we're just going to set that at 230 amps. And we have two BMSs connected to it, two slaves. So there we set it to 2. Chemistry here is LifePo 4. Now there's some other parameters that are not, they're second lower level parameters that you may need to set, especially if you're connecting to a Victron system. So I'll show you how we do that now. We go into firmware and we scroll down to the bottom of the page, and we can see we have this manual communications section. This allows us to go in and manually set parameters without using the graphical interface. So in this case, let's say we needed to change or even look at the CAN frequency. So that would be CAN F question mark. So we type in, so it's address number 16, and in capitals CAN F question mark. Submit. And we got a 2 back. So we look at the manual and we see that 2 tells us that our CAN frequency is set to 500 kilobaud. Let's say we wanted to change that to 1. We go CAN F space 1, submit. We got a response of OK. Now we can go back in and hit the question mark just to verify it. And we can see now that our CAN frequency has been set to 250K as per the user manual on page number 14. There are some other charge coefficients here for Victron communications, which we'll get into later. But for a starting point, you just leave everything exactly where they are. And then you can do some fine-tuning later. So the idea is using the default parameters, you can get the system up and working, maybe change your CAN frequency if you have to, set your shunt variable, and set the system capacity. And you're good to go. Hopefully that helps get you started. Thanks for watching.